Been a minute since I talked about the Hunger Games on here, so let's talk about what I consider one of the most devastating, really tiny moments of Sunrise on the Reaping. I'm talking about when Haymitch and Welly are up in the tree and Haymitch drops a chocolate down to Silka, who is down at the base of the tree sobbing like a child. Because she is a child. Because almost every character that we meet and spend significant time with in the Hunger Games books is either a child or a very, very young adult who has been treated like an adult since they were a child. I think it's really, really important to remember that most of the people that we think of as the scary big bads in the Hunger Games, and that includes Silka and Panache, Cato, Clove, they're children, all of them. And I think that YA books in general, like really the 2010s YA craze, sort of forced a reframing for a lot of people, particularly those of us who were teenagers and young adults in those years. So that we started thinking of 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds as grown-ups. As someone who is now a grown-up, I think it's really important that we look back on series that we originally read as teenagers and really take a close look at those ages. Because the whole thing with Silka at the base of the tree crying because she is a child in an impossible situation. And yeah, she's a career. She's big and she's tall and she's scary and she's capable. But the fact remains that she is a child, and it's an immediate callback to me towards the end of the first Hunger Games book, The Hunger Games, where Cato has the realization that just like every other tribute in the games, being a career didn't matter. He was never going to get closer to the capital. Even if he survived, there was never going to be any winning. The Hunger Games has people who survive them. It does not have any true victors. Or rather, there are victors, there are no winners. Those terms don't mean the same thing. And that moment with Cato is also a moment of Katniss and Peeta looking at him and going, oh, no, he's a kid, he's our age. And I think it's really important that we consider that framing. These are all children. The other thing that repeatedly comes to mind for me with all of this is there's a bit in Catching Fire after the bad poison fog, which, leads to super bad itchiness, and then they get sent medicine, and the medicine is green. And Katniss and Finnick coat their faces with it, and then intentionally create little markings so that they look like creepy zombie monsters, and then they put their faces really, really close to Peeta to go wake him up so that, it's a prank. They're pranking Peeta. And when he sees them, he screams, and it's hilarious. And Katniss and Finnick jump around giggling like tiny little toddlers. Because they're kids. I think it's really easy because of everything that they've been through to talk about these kids like they're adults. But even Finnick, the most grown-up among them, is 24. I did not think of myself as that much of a grown-up at 24. Certainly I did not have that much of a weight of the world on my shoulders. Finnick went through what he went through when he was 14. And most of the devastating pieces of the Hunger Games, like that moment with Silka, hit so much harder when you realize that these characters are children, not just the ones who we've been told are tiny and delicate like Luella or Rue or Prim. They're all children. And furthermore, I think that Haymitch has more of an awareness of their collective childhood than Katniss does, because he got to experience more of a childhood than Katniss did. It's that's where some of that dissonance is from, just within the narrative itself. Because we see these characters as more or less grown-ups, or at least as threats. She is assessing everybody as predator and prey. Because Katniss never really got to have much of a childhood. But Haymitch has this greater awareness that sort of permeates the story from his perspective. He is aware that what he is doing is an act of rebellion. He is aware that he is painting a poster. And he is aware that in acting like the mature and compassionate grown-up to Silka's childish outburst, and doing so by being a child comforting another child, he is, in that act, rebelling. He calls it a poster in the moment. And that awareness of what childhood is and what it's supposed to be like that Haymitch has and Katniss doesn't provides Suzanne Collins with the cover that she needs to give us those more devastating moments that deliver more of a gut punch with that added context. I do think that some of that is that in this year, 2025, we are used to adult stories being told through child eyes and child voices. Whereas in the 2010s, it had to be, oh, you're 16, you're 17, you're a grown-up. Otherwise, you can't be the protagonist of the story. But still, I think it's an important reminder, and it adds so much context and clarity to these stories that make them all the more devastating.